بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. So continuing in Kitab al-Siyam, last time we talked about the first contentious issue that happens every Ramadan, which is about whether we are allowed to use the calculations. And we clarified the issue last week that we are not allowed to use the calculations and that we are meant to only use the physical sighting or the visual sighting. The next issue that comes almost every year is then, do we need to have one visual sighting for the entire ummah, or can different localities have, or different countries have their own visual sighting? This is the issue that we'll begin with tonight. So in the books of fiqh, Ibn Qudamah, he doesn't cover this in Umdat al-Fiqh, but it's covered in the other books of fiqh, which is the issue that they call basically ikhtilaf al-matali' or wahdat al-matali'. Are there different matlas, or is there only one unified matla? So the first point is, what is the definition of matla? What do we mean by matla? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Salamun hiya hatta matla' al-fajr. That on Laylat al-Qadr, there is peace, there is tranquility, hatta matla' al-fajr, until the matla' of al-fajr. Matla' comes from tara'a. Tara'a means to rise up or to become visible. To rise up or to become visible. So for this reason, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He refers to matla' al-fajr, it means tulu' al-fajr. Tulu' al-fajr meaning the break of dawn, or when the dawn becomes visible, when the sun is rising and now the light is rising and it becomes visible. So generally you find matla is translated as the point of ascent, or some translate as horizon. Here, for our purposes in the books of fiqh, matla here, you could think of it as time zone. Think of it in terms of what we would call today time zones. Okay? Where based on the zone you're in, your prayer times, for example, and other things, they would differ. And we're going to talk about the definition of matla later on. But anyway, the idea is that are there different matlas in the ummah? In other words, this matla, this time zone has its own visual sighting, this other matla has its own visual sighting? Or do we say no, the ummah is basically one big matla, so one sighting anywhere covers the entire ummah? On this issue, there are two opinions. The first opinion is that there are different matlas, that each matla will have its own visual sighting. This is the view of the Hanafis, the Shafi'is, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Uthaymeen, and also the Permanent Committee of Scholars in Saudi Arabia. They all take the view that every locality, every matla, which we'll define, has its own sighting. What is the proof for this side? The main proof they have, the primary evidence they have, is the hadith of Qurayb. Qurayb, rahimahullah, was a servant or freed slave of Ibn Abbas. Okay, he was the freed slave and the student of Ibn Abbas, radiyallahu anhuma. So Qurayb, he reported, in this hadith in Sahih Muslim, Qurayb reported that al-Fadl bint al-Harith, she sent him on an errand to Muawiyah. Al-Fadl, radiyallahu anha, she was from the Sahabiyat, and she was the sister of Maymuna. Okay, who was Maymuna, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So al-Fadl is Maymuna's sister, and she is in fact the wife of Al-Abbas, the wife of Al-Abbas himself. Anyway, al-Fadl, so the point is that Qurayb, who is the free slave of Ibn Abbas, and now al-Fadl, they're all part of the same household. al-Fadl sends him on an errand to Syria, to Muawiyah. This is when Muawiyah was the governor. This is the time of Uthman, when Uthman was the Khalifa. So he goes to Syria, he leaves Mecca. Okay, Ibn Abbas was, at this time Ibn Abbas was in Medina. But anyway, he leaves the Hijaz and he goes to Syria to take care of the errand. He fulfills her errand, and in Syria, he's there when it's the end of Sha'ban. So what happens? The hilal is spotted. The crescent moon for Ramadan is spotted. And he himself also sees the moon. So he sees the hilal himself. Qurayb sees it himself. And the other people also see it. They all give testimony that the moon has been sighted, and they start fasting in Syria. Then he leaves Syria, and he finished his business. He's on his way back. Okay? When did they see the moon? They saw the moon on Laylatul Jum'ah, meaning Thursday night. The day starts the night before, right? So he sees it Thursday night, meaning Laylatul Jum'ah, And so the next day, meaning Friday is their first fast. Okay? Then he goes back to Medina. When he arrives in Medina, now it's towards the end of the month, right? Obviously it took a few weeks to go from Syria to Medina. So when he arrives back in Medina, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he says, he says, so Ibn Abbas asked him, ثم ذكر الهلال فقال متى رأيتم الهلال? Ibn Abbas asked him, when did you see the hilal? فقلت رأيناه ليلة الجمعة. He said, we saw it on Thursday night. فقال أنت رأيته? Then Ibn Abbas asked him directly, did you see it yourself? فقلت نعم. So Quraysh said, yes, I saw it. Then he says, وَرَآهُ النَّاسُ وَصَامُوا مُعَاوِيَةً. And the people, they saw it and they fasted, and Muawiyah also, the governor, he fasted. Yani everyone is fasting. فقال, then Ibn Abbas, he said, فقال لكن رأيناه ليلة السبت. He said, as for us here in Medina, when did we see it? We saw it Friday night. Okay? So in Syria they saw it Thursday night, which meant that their first day of fasting was what? Friday. As for Medina, they saw it when? Friday night, which means that their first day of fasting was Saturday, right? They're a day late. They're a day behind. With me? Okay. Now here's the point. Ibn Abbas, he said, لكن رأيناه ليلة السبت فلا نزال نصوم حتى نكمل 30 أو نراه. So we will keep on fasting until we complete 30 days or we see the new moon, meaning the moon of Shawwal. فقلت أولا تكتفي برؤية معاوية وصيامه. Will you not, is the sighting of the moon by Muawiyah and his fasting not sufficient for you? Yani he's saying, Qurayb is saying, I told you, we saw it on Thursday night. Okay? You know, you were a day late. I saw it myself. So isn't the sighting of Muawiyah and the fact that he's fasting, isn't that enough for you? Okay? In other words, if it's one sighting for the whole ummah, khalas, yani I told you, the sighting was in Syria. Obviously I couldn't tell you beforehand, I just got here. But I'm telling you the sighting was previously, it happened before you. So therefore you should take the sighting of Muawiyah, and you should basically, you're going to do what? You're going to go with that sighting, and you're going to do what? Okay. If they're a day late, right? Then what about that first day? They have to make it up, right? Yeah, if we say, and this side is saying you have different countries can have their own sightings, okay? The other side says no, it's one sighting for the whole ummah, right? Well, if it's one sighting for the whole ummah, then not only does, like Qurayb is saying, aren't you going to take what Muawiyah said? Which means that you basically will go with, you cannot just keep going on your own until you hit 30 days or you see the hilal. Basically, you're going to make it 29 days, right? You can't make it 28. And if you make it 30 and you're a day late, it's 31. So you're going to have to make it 29 days. You don't have to wait for the hilal anymore. Because I'm telling you you're a day late because we just saw the moon in Syria. You with me? So not only will they stop at 29, but what else? They have to make up the day, right? Because they missed that first day, that Friday, because they didn't see the moon. You guys with me? Okay? So Qurayb, he said, is the sighting of the moon by Muawiyah not valid for you? Now this is the point. Ibn Abbas, he said, لا. هكذا أمرنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, no. This is how the Prophet ﷺ taught us. Okay? This is how the Prophet ﷺ instructed us. Okay? So the point here is that here you had two countries, you had two sightings, right? You had the sighting in Medina, you had the sighting in Syria. And this hadith is clear proof that Ibn Abbas, not only that did he not take the sighting of Syria, but he said, this, what I'm doing, is what we learned from the Prophet ﷺ. So it's not his own, no, I don't think we're going to do it because my opinion is this. He's saying no. هكذا أمرنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This is how the Prophet ﷺ taught us. Clear? Okay, so this hadith is very clear in terms of proof for this side that says that no, each country has its own sighting. Okay? Second proof they bring is that they make the analogy with the prayer timings. Okay? So they say, for example, just like in every country you have different, the sun, the sunrise and the sunset are at different times, and therefore the prayer times are also calculated differently. Just because, for example, sunset here is what time now? 7:40, right? 7:40 here doesn't mean 7:40 in Japan or 7:40 in Mecca. Obviously, it's going to be different, right? So just like we accept that the prayer times are going to be different based on your time zone, then likewise the visibility of the moon is also going to be different. Because in one locality it might be visible, another locality it might not be visible, right? So why are you going to, unless you're going to compel everybody to follow the same prayer times, meaning, okay, if it's Fajr in Mecca is 5 a.m., you're going to make 5 a.m. across the entire world. Unless you're going to compel one set of prayer times, then you can't compel one set of sightings as well. Yani it's one or the other. Both things, it's the same logic. So if you accept that there are different prayer times based on time zone, then you should also accept there are different sightings based on time zone. If you don't accept that, then you should also logically not accept different prayer times. You with me? See the argument? Okay. And obviously no one would say, yeah, we're going to have one set of prayer times across the world. No one would do that. Okay. All right. On the other side, you have the arguments for those who say, no, there's one sighting for the entire Ummah. This is the view of the Malikis and the Hanbalis. Okay? What are their proofs? The first hadith, or the first proof, is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which we've already covered now from the beginning of the chapter. صُومُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ وَأَفْطِرُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ. You fast when you see the moon, and you break the fast when you see the moon. The question here is, who is being addressed by the Prophet ﷺ? When the Prophet ﷺ is saying, "Sumu li ru'yatihi," you all fast when you see the moon, and you all break the fast when you see the moon. Who is being addressed? Muslims, obviously. He's not talking to Jews, all right? Yeah, but who? Only the people in Medina. So we're not in Medina, so the hadith doesn't apply. Who is being addressed here? Okay, according to this view, the entire ummah is being addressed. The entire ummah, when the Prophet ﷺ is saying, "Sumu li ru'yatihi," you all of you Muslims, all 1 billion of you, you all fast when you see the moon, and you all break the fast when you see the moon. You understand? So if the address is to the entire ummah, then likewise one signing would be enough for the entire ummah, right?
He's not talking about time zones, he's talking about...
There is no mention of time zone. He didn't say, you in Medina, you fast when you see it, and you in Syria, you fast when you see it, and you in Iraq, he didn't say anything like that. The address is to the entire ummah, saying, you all, the entire ummah, you fast when you see it. Right? Now obviously, as Muslims, we don't say that we all fast when everybody sees the moon. We rely on just one or two people to testify, right? So if one person, two people, however many, we're going to get to that later, but if we have the required number of witnesses, then the rest of the Muslims who didn't see the moon will say, "Khalas, we trust you, and we're all going to fast." So this hadith, because if it's taken to mean that it's addressing the entire ummah, this means that one signing would be enough for everybody. With me?
Yeah.
Okay. Second proof is the hadith related by Abu Dawud and others that Abu Umair, he narrated that غُمَّ عَلَيْنَا هِلَالُ شَوَّالٍ فَأَصْبَحْنَا صِيَامًا. So in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was the end of Ramadan, okay, the 29th day, or the night basically of the 30th. So they went out to see, is tomorrow Eid or not? But it was cloudy that night, okay. غُمَّ عَلَيْنَا هِلَالُ شَوَّالٍ. So they couldn't see the moon because it was cloudy. So what happened? The next day was what? It's cloudy. So the next day was 30th, right? It was cloudy on the 29th of Ramadan. So they need to see, is Eid tomorrow or not? It's cloudy, they can't see the moon, so what will they do? They will make tomorrow the 30th of Ramadan, they will fast. فَأَصْبَحْنَا صِيَامًا. So they're fasting now, okay? فَجَاءَ رُكَبْ مِنْ آخِرِ النَّهَارِ فَشَهِدُوا عِنْدَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم أَنَّهُمْ رَأَوْا الْهِلَالِ بِالْأَمْسِ. So now it's the 30th day. Towards the end of the day, just shortly before iftar, a caravan came in from outside Medina, and they testified to the Prophet ﷺ that they saw the hilal the night before. Meaning in Medina it was cloudy, they couldn't see the hilal. These people were outside Medina, travelers, a caravan, and they said, no, we saw the hilal. By the time they made it into Medina, it was already towards the end of the day. Okay? Which means what? That day that the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba are fasting is what? Eid. Right? So they came and they said, we saw the hilal yesterday. فَأَمَرَهُمْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم أَنْ يُفْطِرُوا ثُمَّ يَخْرُجُوا لِعِيدِهِمْ مِنَ الْغَدِ. So immediately the Prophet ﷺ ordered the Sahaba, break your fast, because it's Eid. Break your fast, and he ordered that the next day you will go out to pray the Eid prayer. Yani khalas, the time for Eid, the Eid, Salat al-Eid is gone. We'll pray Salat al-Eid tomorrow. With me? And this hadith is authentic. Clear? Okay? So what's the point? The point is that this caravan, they were not from Medina, right? They were coming from a different matla. And when they saw the hilal, they were in a different time zone, different matla. Okay? So, two matala' is the exact opposite of the hadith of Qurayb, right? Because now you have two different zones, two different matlas. These people came and they said, we saw the hilal in this other place. And immediately the Prophet, he didn't even ask. And the hadith, he didn't even ask, well, how far are you outside Medina? Maybe you were in the vicinity of Medina, so we're all in the same matla. There's no question even asked. Khalas, you saw it, break the fast. Tomorrow is we're going to pray Salatul Eid. With me? So there's no mention yet. The Prophet never even asked, well, how far out were you and so on. The other side, obviously, they come and say, well, maybe they weren't that far out and they were, in the precinct of Medina and so on. But clearly they were some distance because it took them, at least 2 days, right? If they were traveling in the night and they were traveling in the day, they were out a ways before they finally arrived in Medina. Clear? Okay. Final proof they bring is a hadith narrated by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu that a Bedouin, he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, I have sighted the moon. I saw the moon. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Atashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Do you testify that there is no one worthy of worship except Allah? He said, yes. And then he said, do you testify that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah? He said, yes. Then he said, Ya Bilal, adhin fi nas an yasumu ghadan. Then this is the beginning of the month. So the Bedouin, he came and the Prophet ﷺ, he told Bilal, make the announcement that everybody should fast tomorrow. What's the proof here? Again, the Prophet ﷺ didn't ask this Bedouin, who's again outside Medina, where do you live exactly? Are you close to us? Are you in the same matla or are you in a different matla? Again, there's no, it's just one sighting and that's enough. I don't need to ask which matla you're in and so on.
So it doesn't matter where he came from, he just accepted his testimony.
Yeah, he did. The point is he didn't even ask. So if the matla was important, then he would have. Now this is again different because Ibn Abbas was asking the Sahabi. In fact, you know what? I forgot one point. Going back to the hadith of Qurayb, Ibn Taymiyyah, he makes the point here that if it was the case that you're supposed to have one sighting for the ummah, then what Ibn Abbas did here, the Sahaba should have been doing all the time, which is basically anytime somebody's coming into Medina, they should be saying, did you see the moon? Did you see the moon? Did you see the moon? Right? And then if people said, yes, I just came from Iraq or I just came from Yemen or I came from wherever and we saw the moon, then they would be doing what? Not only would they be changing the fast, but they would be what? Making up days. Because if somebody came from Yemen and said, yes, we saw it and you're also a day late or whatever, then again that year they would make up the day. But there's no record of the Sahaba neither asking this question nor making up the days. Okay, I know I messed it up because I should have made this point earlier, but just going back to this side says that you don't need to have one sighting for the whole ummah. Each country has its own sighting. And Ibn Taymiyyah makes the point because if it was one sighting, then the Sahaba should have been checking everybody coming in. Did you see the moon? Did you see the moon? And then made the corrections in terms of making qada and so on. Clear?
Yeah, just so I clarify. So because of their argument, they would specifically ask, where did you come from? Because they're talking about different time zones, right?
Yeah. Like here. Yeah. So Ibn Abbas asked, and I already knew Qurayb's coming from Medina. But the point is that if other caravans had come in, they should have said, where are you coming from? Number one, where are you coming from? And then number two, did you see the moon, right? Every Ramadan. And then they would have made the course, correction that, okay, somebody else saw the moon before us. And if it's one sighting is enough for the whole ummah, then we have to make up the day. And there's no record of them doing that. Therefore, that's another proof for this side. The side that says you have ikhtilaf al-matala'. Clear? Okay. So anyway, these are the arguments for having multiple sightings. And then here are the proofs for one sighting. The last proof that this side brings, the Malikis and the Hanbalis, they say that having one sighting for the ummah promotes more unity, right? And this no one can deny. That if there is one sighting, and all the Muslims fast based on that, clearly there would definitely be more unity than having this country fast on this day and this country fast on this day, and then Eid is one day over here and it's another day over here and so on, as is the case nowadays, right? Okay. Then that leaves the problem of the hadith of Qurayb, because the hadith of Qurayb is very clear, right? Ibn Abbas said, no, this is how the Prophet ﷺ taught us. So what do they say? This side they basically say, Ibn Qudama, the author himself, he says in Al-Mughni that the reason Ibn Abbas didn't accept the sighting of Muawiyah, or the sighting of what Qurayb was saying, was because he didn't accept only one witness for breaking the fast. And we're going to come to it, that according to the Sunnah, you should have at least two witnesses for breaking the fast. For starting the fast, you only need one. For Eid, for breaking the fast, you need two. And we're going to come to the hadith. Anyway, the point is that Ibn Qudama says the reason Ibn Abbas said, no, I'm not going to take it, is because you're only Qurayb, you're only one witness, and I need more than one witness. Now, what's the counter to that counter? What's the rebuttal to that? You guys with me? Okay. The hadith of Qurayb is a very strong argument against what Ibn Qudama and the Hanbalis are saying, right? Which is, the hadith of Qurayb says every country can have its own sighting. So how can this side respond to that hadith? Ibn Qudama says, well, the reason Ibn Abbas didn't take that sighting is because Qurayb is just one guy, and you can't have one person for breaking the fast. You need to have at least two witnesses. Okay? But then the other side, the Shafis and the Hanafis could come back with something else, a very clear argument, which is what?
They said all serious ones.
Yeah, Qurayb said it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
He didn't say I was the only one who saw it. He said I saw it and the people saw it. And we all fasted, right? So he already affirmed that there were other sightings as well, or other witnesses. So this argument is not, Ibn Qudama brings this point, but it's not a strong point. Okay? So the hadith itself crushes this argument. Clear? Okay. So what's the correct opinion? To be honest, it's not easy, and both sides have very strong proofs, and both sides have very strong arguments. But actually, there is a solution, which is that regardless which side may be stronger, which side is more correct, in the end, in our day and age, they actually lead to the same place. They actually lead to the same conclusion. Okay, how is that? If we take the side that says you have different sightings, each country has its own sighting, or I should say each matla has its own sighting, that still leaves another question, which is what? How do you define a matla, right? What exactly is a matla? Where are the boundaries of the matla? So on this one, there are multiple opinions, but we'll just look at the three main ones, okay? The first opinion is that the matla is defined by the distance that is covered, or the distance that allows a person to shorten the prayers. In other words, you know that we haven't covered it in Kitab Salah, but I think it's well known. When you cover a certain distance, then you're allowed to make the prayers that are 4 rak'ahs, like Dhuhr, Asr, Isha, you make it what? 2, right? You shorten the prayer when you are traveling, yes? How much distance do you have to cover? The correct view on this is that it's based on custom, right? Urf. Urf will dictate the distance that is required to be covered in order to shorten the prayer. So for example, many of us, we work in London, right? You may live in High Wycombe and you work in London, okay? And our culture here in England is that going into London is not travel, just a commute, right? So therefore, you'd go from here into London and you wouldn't shorten your prayer. You would pray the normal prayers because it's just considered your daily commute, right? Whereas, let's say, for example, going from here to, I don't know, Manchester, this would be considered what? A journey, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. As far as I know, this is the case, yes? So if you went from here to Manchester, for example, then you would shorten the prayers, right? So based on that, they would say that the amount of distance, it's not fixed, but whatever distance you need to cover in order to shorten the prayers, that then becomes the matla. So in other words, High Wycombe and the amount of distance you need to cover before which is, you don't shorten the prayers, this is one matla. Manchester would be another matla. See what I'm saying? Based on this definition. This is the view of Imam al-Juwayni, al-Ghazali, and al-Baghawi. They were all Shafi scholars. Okay? Clear? Second definition, and this is the more common one, is that matla is the iqlim. Iqlim, you could translate, is basically province. Okay? So in the old days, it would be the province of Iraq, province of Egypt, province of Khurasan, and so on. Okay? In our times, you can call it basically the nation state. So it's basically the countries. Okay? So based on this, each country would be a matla. Okay? Now, before we get to the third one, Ibn Taymiyyah, he looked at these arguments, these definitions of matla, and he deconstructed them. So the first one about the travel, okay? Ibn Taymiyyah says this is completely irrelevant in terms of the hilal. Why? Because the issue of distance that you need to cover in order to shorten the prayer, that's all about making it easier for the Muslims. In other words, when you're traveling, as a mercy to the Muslims, Allah has decreased the amount of prayer, or the number of rak'ahs that have to be prayed, right? This is sadaqah, as the Prophet ﷺ said, it's sadaqah from Allah, that Allah has decreased it. So it's about lightening the burden on Muslims when they're already having a hard time traveling, right? What does any of this have to do with the hilal? In other words, the fact that you cover a certain distance to Manchester, right, and you pray 2 instead of 4, that's to make it easier for you. But this doesn't affect anything or have anything to do with the hilal. It's not like, for example, it's more visible here, or it's less visible there, it's irrelevant to the question of the hilal. You understand? So bringing this in as the definition doesn't make any sense. Secondly, if we apply this definition, Ibn Taymiyyah, he says, this would fracture the ummah even more than it is in his time and even our time. Because this would mean what? That Wickham would have its own sighting, Manchester would have its own sighting, name me some other cities, right? Edinburgh, Glasgow, whatever, every city would have its own sighting. So instead of all of the UK having its own sighting separate from Morocco and Egypt or whatever, every single city, you could even have Mecca and Medina, for example, having their own sightings. Do you understand? So for this reason also, this definition of matla actually leads to worse results because it fractures the ummah into even more smaller pieces. With me? Second point is, or the second definition about iqlim, again Ibn Taymiyyah, he says, this one is not logical. Because if you take, for example, if we take the modern boundaries, if you take Saudi, for example, on the southern border of Saudi borders which country? Geography test. Saudi borders which country on the south? Yemen. Yemen, right? So, that border is all mountains, okay? So you could literally have one person on the Saudi side, on one side of the mountain, one person on the Yemeni side on the other side of the mountain, and this guy could be fasting on one day, and this guy could be celebrating Eid on another day. Do you understand? So Ibn Taymiyyah said this makes no sense. They're literally right next to each other. But because of this artificial line, is that time?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Because of this artificial boundary of iqlim, you would have some people fasting on one day and other people fasting on another day. This doesn't make any sense. With me?
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
La ilaha illallah. So, Ibn Taymiyyah, he says that the first two definitions don't work. They're not logical. So what is the correct definition then? He says that the best definition is that it is بلوغ الخبر في زمن يفيد. In other words, the matla is the amount of distance in which if somebody heard the news or saw the hilal, he could convey that news in sufficient time for the people to fast. In other words, imagine you're in Mecca, okay, and you see the hilal or the hilal has been spotted, okay. If you go in a straight line or you go in they send riders out in different directions, the amount of ground they can cover to let everybody know the hilal has been spotted and you should fast the next day. So notice how much ground they can cover before suhoor, right? Before fajr, with enough time that the people can fast. That whole area will be a matla. And then anybody who is not able to be reached within that zone, that would constitute a different matla. You with me? Clear?
To go from Fajr till,
Let's say you're in a certain place, right? If you think about the old days, they see the hilal. Now they're announcing it, they're letting people know. How far can that news travel?
okay.
And it has to be able to travel with enough time for the people who receive the news to fast. Obviously, if they get the news after Fajr, it's not going to do them any good, right? So the amount of ground they can cover, the distance that they can cover, in which they can reach the people and let people know that you need to fast tomorrow, this is one matla. Okay? The reason there's not a clear definition is because this is not defined explicitly in the Quran and the Sunnah, right? The Quran and the Sunnah don't define exactly what is a matla. That's why you have all these different ijtihadat from the scholars. But out of these definitions, the one that seems to make the most sense is Ibn Taymiyyah's. Then that way, at least, it's not arbitrary. So the reason, for example, you go back to the issue about the iqlim, it's not just some arbitrary line saying this is one province, or this is one country, this is another country. You'll fast on one day and you'll fast on another day. It's because the news couldn't reach that person, and that's why he's fasting based on some other information. You with me? Now, if we take this definition of a matla, okay? We said there's two opinions, right? One is that one sighting, anywhere in the world, everyone has to fast. The other side says, no, every matla will have its own sighting, right? Well, if you take that side that says that every matla has its own sighting, and we say a matla is the distance or the zone in which the news can travel and reach the people, right? Then, how many sightings would you need in our time? One. Why? Exactly, because nowadays the news can reach everybody in an instant, right? So as soon as it goes down in New Zealand or Australia, before it's even sunset here, we'll already have the news. So the world has become a global village, right? Because of communication. So if we took this definition, Ibn Taymiyyah's definition of the matla, the world's already basically one matla. So whether you take the view of ikhtilaf al-matali', that you can have multiple sightings, or one sighting, in the end it's one sighting. You understand? Because even if you take the view that every matla has its own sighting, it's all one matla. Because as soon as the news something happens in one part of the world, we would get the news. It wouldn't take days anymore. We'd get it right away in an instant. You understand? Okay. Now, quickly, even so, as I said, whether we don't have to go into which one is the stronger opinion, because in the end it ends up with the same conclusion, which is that one sighting would be enough for everybody. However, we're not in charge, right? We don't make the decisions. So until the ummah all agree to this, there would still be differences. So what do? The bottom line for us is we fast with the Muslims in the locality. So wherever you are, whichever country you're in, you will fast and you will break your fast with those people. Do you understand? And whether they go based on one sighting or multiple sightings, whatever their criteria is, you will just go along with that. Because again, the primary aim of the Sharia is to promote unity. Okay? And the worst harm that can come is that if people in the same locality, it's one thing for Muslims on the other side of the world to be fasting on a different day. That may be acceptable, but for have Muslims in the same locality fasting and celebrating Eid on different days, this is something that is not desirable. Okay? We'll take the questions afterwards. We'll continue after Salah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Before we, there's just a few more miscellaneous issues to wrap up the chapter. Before we get to that, any questions about the last bit? Question? Yeah, look, as I said, obviously for us we're going to go with the wise. But what I'm saying is that as much as possible, the Muslims in every locality should try to be unified in the start of Ramadan and the end of Ramadan. Okay, regardless of which view. So regardless if you take the view of the one sighting or the multiple sightings, at the end of the day, unity is important. So, and I think basically here in England, because it's always cloudy, you're always going to be following another sighting, right? You're going to be following somebody else. So it's worth there being a discussion, not amongst us, but let's say amongst the leadership of the masajid, to agree on a common country to follow if they didn't want to follow. In other words, I think, as far as I know, I think it's like half follow, well, not maybe not half, but some follow Pakistan and some follow Saudi Arabia, I think. And this is about it, right? And maybe there are others who try to do their own sighting and who are unsuccessful every year. But the point is that it's worth, it would be logical, it would be sensible for everyone to, even if it was, for example, everybody followed Pakistan, right? As long as it was the goal of unity is more important than which sighting is being followed. You see what I'm saying? But anyway, I don't want to get into the modern thing. The point is about the debate. In our day and age, I guess in a sense we're lucky because even if you, regardless which way you go, even if you take the view that you have different matlas, as we said, how do you define the matla? Nowadays it would be basically one matla. Clear? All right. Going back then to the book. Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah, he says, so this is starting now on page 288, determining when Ramadan begins, and then we stopped here. وَإِذَا رَأَى الْهِلَالَ وَحْدَهُ صَامَ. If one Muslim or if a person himself sees the crescent alone, he should fast. In other words, what about a scenario where a person sees the hilal and either he doesn't get the chance to inform others or his shahada is rejected? Okay, so he sees the hilal himself, but nobody else is fasting with him. Should he fast or not? According to the madhab, according to the Hanbalis, they would say yes, you fast. So even if everybody else is not fasting, so imagine now you're in Mecca, Medina, any place, okay? You go and say, hey, I saw the moon. They said, look, we know you, we don't trust you, you have, you see it every year, something like that. So they don't fast. So he has seen the moon. What should he do? According to the madhab, they would say he has to fast. Okay? Why? Because, again, the hadith, sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi, that you have to fast when you see the moon. You saw the moon, therefore how could you not fast the day of Ramadan? You know for a fact it's Ramadan. Okay? However, the other view is the view of Ibn Taymiyyah that no, he shouldn't fast. Okay? That he should instead, even if he sees the moon himself, he should fast with the people. Why? Because another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, related by Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, and Nasai and others, صومكم يوم تصومون وفطركم يوم تفطرون وأضحاكم يوم تضحون. That your fast is the day that you all fast. You all fast. يوم تصومون. All you all fast. وفطركم. Your Eid is the day you all break the fast. And the day of your slaughter is the day that you all slaughter. In other words, this goes back to what we talked about last time, that there is the astronomical month and the legal month. So even if the person has seen the moon by himself, he's seen the beginning of the astronomical month, right? But the legal month is the month when all the Muslims are fasting. So if the Muslims aren't fasting, then that's not the legal month. You with me? So therefore, the view of Ibn Taymiyyah, and this is the correct view, is that even if the person sees the hilal himself, and he knows that tomorrow is Ramadan, if the people are not fasting, he doesn't fast. Okay? Others different. Ash-Shafi'i, for example, they said no, he should fast, but he keeps it quiet and he keeps it undercover. But he should still fast because he knows that it's Ramadan. However, as we talked about, it's the legal month that counts, and this hadith proves the point. The legal month is the month when everyone starts fasting. That's the beginning of the month. So if everyone's not fasting, then you don't need to fast. Clear? Okay. فإن كان عدلا صام الناس بقوله ولا يفطر إلا بشهادة عدلين ولا يفطر إذا رآه وحده. If he is a trustworthy witness, then the people should fast based on his testimony, his statement. And they should not break the fast at the end of Ramadan unless it is based on the testimony of two trustworthy individuals. Why is that? Based again on a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, فَإِن شَهِدَ شَاهِدًا فَصُومُوا وَأَفْطِرُوا. That this hadith says, if two witnesses give testimony, then you begin the fasting and you end the fasting. Okay? If two witnesses give testimony, then you begin the fast, you end the fast. Now someone could say, wait a minute. You just said earlier that if somebody gave testimony, there was one witness, you begin fasting, right? Why is that? Yeah, the hadith of the Bedouin we talked about, right? The Bedouin came, the Prophet ﷺ just asked him, do you give the shahada? He said yes. He said, Khas, Bilal, make the announcement, fasting starts tomorrow. So, we have one hadith saying you need two witnesses, and we have another hadith, the one of the A'rabi, the Bedouin, where he came, and it was one witness. So that one clarifies this one. Meaning, to begin the fast of Ramadan, you only need one witness. One reliable witness. But to end the fasting, you need two. With me? To begin the fasting, more is obviously better, but the minimum is one. But to announce Eid, to end the fasting, the minimum is two, because of this hadith. So even though this hadith says you need two to begin and end, the other hadith clarifies that no, one is sufficient. Okay, two is better, but one is sufficient. And as for Eid, you need two. Clear? Okay. And then the last bit, وَلَا يُفْطِرُ إِذَا رَآهُ وَحْدَهُ. He should not break the fast based on citing it by himself. Again, the Hanbalis, they say, now here's a bit of a contradiction, because the Hanbalis said, if he sees it by himself, the beginning of the month, he should fast, right? Even if no one else is fasting. But if he sees it at the end, he sees the month of the Hilal of Shawwal, he shouldn't break the fast. He should, in other words, he knows tomorrow is Eid, but he'll fast with the people. Okay? Why the difference? Okay, good. All right, so first let me make sure that the problem is clear. We're talking about the madhab now. The Hanbalis say, if you go by yourself and you see the moon and nobody else sees it and believes you, so you know tomorrow's Ramadan, okay, but nobody else is fasting, the Hanbalis say you should do what? Fast. Now at the end of the month, you are so lucky you see the Hilal for Shawwal as well. And again, nobody believes you, okay? So you know tomorrow is Eid, okay? But they don't believe you, so they're going to fast. What should the Hanbalis say now? What should you do? Stop looking, yeah. They're going to say, no, you fast with the people. So the first time they said, no, be different from the people, and this time they said, do the same as the people, right? Why? One is the point about the two witnesses. That to break the fast, you need two. That's one point that we just talked about, this hadith. The second point they say is that if you are not fasting while the other people, if you are fasting and the others are not, this is easier to stomach because your difference is not apparent to everybody else, right? Nobody knows you're fasting or not. They say, oh, you want to have lunch? No, I'm not hungry today, or whatever. You get out of it. So the difference is not apparent. But if you celebrate Eid, in other words, the next day everyone's fasting and you're eating dates and mitai and all this stuff, right? Now, and you're celebrating and making takbir and so on, this difference is now much more apparent, that you are contradicting the people. Do you understand? So for these two reasons, the Hanbalis, the madhab says, no, in this case, don't celebrate Eid different from the people. And this is important for us because, I don't know how common this is here, but I know back in the States, unfortunately, and I was guilty of this, in my youth at least, that when I was younger, I used to be a hardcore one-sider. So if anybody, anywhere in the world it was cited, khalas, tomorrow's Eid. Doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. Okay? This is completely wrong. Completely wrong. Even according to the madhab. Okay? Completely wrong. So the point is that even if you believe, if you're a hardcore one-siding for the whole ummah, I don't care if they see it in Indonesia, the Philippines, enough for me, even still, you fast and you break the fast with the people. This is the view of Ibn Taymiyyah, based on the hadith we covered. صَوْمُكُمْ يَوْمَ تَصُومُونَ وَفِطْرُكُمْ يَوْمَ تُفْطِرُونَ. Your day of fasting is the day that you all fast, and the day of Eid is the day that you all celebrate Eid. Clear? Yes?
So just a little bit of clarification. So in terms of, I know last week you mentioned a slightly different argument, say you've covered the rest of it. So we're just talking about the reality of the UK, right? It's always cloudy.
Yeah.
Generally, most of the time, we don't see them.
All right.
So technically, because we are always going to do based on sighting, or Maklas, we are always, most of the time, 30 days on.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Based on what you said. Because
Yeah.
really, we're not going to fast 29 days because we can't sight the moon here. We're not going to rely on technology.
Well, look, the thing is that because, okay, if you went with your own sighting and you never see the moon, so yes, the question is about basically, if I understand it, is we're always going to be fasting 30 days Ramadan here, right? Yeah.
Based on what we
If we try to do our own sighting, because we'd always go out, it would always be cloudy generally, and we'd always say, "Khalas, tomorrow's the 30th," right? Yes. But if it was the case that we said that the masajid said we're going to follow some other country, then it may not be 30 days. It could be 29 days.
My next question is: so where does that sit in this? For example, in this locality, we've got some people that follow Pakistan, we've got much that follow South Africa, we've got much that follow Saudi Arabia. The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Okay. So, as I said, the debate is about in the books of fiqh is about whether there's one matla or one sighting or multiple sightings. Okay. If you take the view it's one sighting, then it wouldn't matter which country saw it, right?
I understand.
And practically speaking, the reason they do it here is because of the visibility conditions, right? And to make it easier because of family and so on and so forth, right? At the end of the day, the current situation is outside of what's covered in the books of fiqh. So when they have been discussing stuff, they're not talking about Pakistan and India, whatever. They're talking about based on the hadith, whether it's allowed to have multiple sightings or not, right? As I said, at the end of the day, put all this aside. The most important thing is that we stay with the locality. So to make it simple, doesn't matter what day they do it. The day that they start the fasting, you fast with them. The day that they break the fasting, you break your fast with them. Now I know in some, like you said in Wickham, right? You could even have division here in Wickham. So now which one do you follow? Khalas, your local masjid, right? Your local masjid. Okay, and the more unity there is, the better. This is the general rule. Okay, quickly I need to wrap up. So, anyway, the point is that if somebody saw the moon on his own, regardless whether it's at the beginning of the month or at the end of the madhab makes a distinction, but the correct view is that there's no distinction. Even if you see the moon regardless, at the beginning or at the end of the month, you will fast and break the fast with the people. Okay? There's a section here, we're going to skip it because this is, it's not, it's the madhab and it's not important. So I'll cover just a couple more things. What if it's a woman who sees the hilal? So let's say the person who sees the hilal is a woman, it's not a man. Okay? It's one woman. In this case, do the people fast or they don't fast? How many say fast? How many say don't fast? Okay, no, you fast. The one woman sighting is equal to one man sighting. Okay? So regardless whether it's a man or it's a woman, for the beginning of the month, right? For the beginning of the month, whether it's that one witness is a man or a woman, it's irrelevant. Okay? This testimony, again, of course, she has to be just, and we're skipping that section about how do you define just, but the point is that as long as the witness is just and a person of upright character, regardless man or woman, the sighting is accepted. The qadi will take it and announce the beginning of the month. Clear? Okay, the last point, it's not in the book, but it comes up often, which is about what if you begin fasting in one place and then you travel, so you're now at another place, you're going to celebrate Eid in another country. So let's say, for example, you begin fasting in the UK, then you travel to Pakistan or Saudi or some other country, and you're there for Eid, okay? Do you celebrate Eid based on the country you started your fasting in, or on the destination that you have arrived to? Do you understand? Okay, you will go with the destination. You will go with the country you're in. In other words, if you started here, and then you travel to another place, okay, and they started the fasting one day later, for example, okay, you will celebrate Eid with the people there, your locality there, okay? Now, if it's the case that they started, so imagine a scenario where, you started in country A, you're in country B, and because country B didn't start at the same time as country A, maybe they started earlier. So if they're continuing to fast, you will fast even if you fast 31 days. No problem. Okay? You fasted 30 days and the extra days, khalas, is nafal. Okay? Or it could be the case that you fasted 28 days. Let's say, for example, they started later and they finished earlier. So you fasted 28 days. What do? You fast 28 days and you celebrate Eid with them, and then what? You make qada. This clear? So the point is, when you travel for Eid, you will celebrate Eid with the people you're at, and even if the days are not consistent, meaning it's less or more, you will, if it's less, obviously you make qada, and if it's more, it's khalas, it's nafil. Any questions? Yes?
Just one question. In some authorities now, regarding the witnessing of the moon, if that moon is set according to calculations, they would reject the witness.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. Yeah, that's all right. There's a recording, so you can listen to that. Bottom line is, we don't accept the calculations because the Prophet ﷺ ordered us to fast and break the fast based on the visual sighting. Okay? And this was explained at length last week. Any other questions? Yes?
If he's traveling so far, he shouldn't travel when he's fasting then, we should.
No, there's no harm in traveling when you're fasting. There's no restriction. So even in Ramadan, you're allowed to travel, and the Sahaba used to travel in Ramadan. They made jihad in Ramadan. So there's no problem with that. Okay? Anyone else? سبحانك وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك